And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Kara Marlene, who experienced love's purest form during her near-death experience, and now she's living a miraculous life. Kara, thank you for joining me, and welcome.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Kara, if you don't mind, let's start on the day that this NDE happened and go from there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for allowing me to start there. So it was a summer day. I was 8 years old. I had a childhood near-death experience, and I was on the family farm with my youngest sister, Bonnie, and we were playing outside. And if you imagine like clear blue skies, white puffy clouds, breeze on your face, and we were on our bikes. I loved to bike. I biked everywhere. We were raised on a ranch outside of this very small town I was raised in, and so I would just go for miles out and about. And it was mid morning, and one of my sisters, who was older, she was cleaning the house with mother, and of course, she came out. she was all huffy and told us to come in. It was time to clean up and do something. And of course, like being the tomboy and the rebel, I decided to give my bike one more spin. And on the ranch that I was raised on, there was a house on top of the hill, and at the bottom there was a large barn, and there was a garage attached to it. My father owned a construction company, and in that garage, he had all his tools. It was his tool shed. And so on that, there was what was called a water lip. The garage door came down, and the water lip kept the water from coming in. It's like about 4-inch, maybe 6-inch slab of cement across the very bottom of the door frame. And I don't know what happened, but there had been a chunk taken out of it. And in my 8-year-old mind, that to me was a ramp, because I was, I wanted to be cool. And I think I'd seen some kind of video of a BMXer on my friend's TV. And so anyway, I started on the top of that hill, and I biked as hard and as fast as I could to the bottom of it. And when I hit that bump, my bike stopped, and I went head over heels over the handlebars. And that's when everything changed. My life changed forever. As I lifted off of the seat, that sensation of like flying hit. But also I remember feeling my awareness, that I know to be my awareness, just open up full throttle. And in the split second from when I left that bike and I hit the ground, it was almost like there was a bubble that just kind of expanded from me. And I was fully aware of everything that was happening. But I remember the oddest thing was when I hit the ground, I heard myself hit the ground. It was as if it was away from me. And I remember feeling my little body crumble, and a sigh kind of escaped my lips. I was like, oh, and everything just going black. And when I came to, I remember I was on my back, and I could see the frame of the garage. It was full of light, and everything else was just dark. I couldn't see anything. And I was trying to blink myself awake. And as I was coming to, I realized that I couldn't move. And it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I was tired or whatnot. It felt as though I was trapped in my body. Like it was like my body was kind of a corpse, basically, just a body, and I was trapped in it, and I just couldn't move. But I also knew that I could look, like my eyes could move and I could speak, but nothing else. And so I started to panic, and I looked at the rectangle, and I noticed there was a figure there, and I couldn't tell if it was male or female. It was blurry, but I thought it was my sister, my youngest sister, that was with me. And I asked her for help. I was like, Mom, I need help. There's something really wrong. I can't move. And she didn't go anywhere. It was as if she was ignoring me. And I started getting angry because I was terrified. And I got a snippy with her. I was like, Mom and Dad are gonna be so mad at you. you need to help me. Like, I need help. This is serious. And I remember feeling my anxiety, and I knew I was speaking, but that awareness behind me as I was kind of like duly experiencing everything, it beckoned me to actually take in what was happening. And as I faded from that conversation, I realized that I took in the blackness around the blinding light of the garage. And I remember I should have seen the ceiling, and I should have seen the walls, and I should have seen like some kind of like the cement floor that I landed on, and there was nothing. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized it had space. It was vast, like space. And I remember something clicking because I had seen a video of space, like astronauts into space. I loved those science kids. I loved those things. And I remember realizing it was like space, like infinite space. And I realized I should have nothing holding me up, but I know there was nothing there, but it felt like something was holding me there, although there was nothing at all. And my physical body in that reality, I was like, this shouldn't make sense. This shouldn't be happening. And then my attention went to the light, and I realized that I kind of took in, I should see the sky. I should see the blue sky, the clouds. I should see the rolling hills of Kansas full of like the wheat that was turning in season, and the summer wheat, and then the hay barn and the trailer, and I didn't see anything. And then something dropped into my awareness, and I realized that this light that I was seeing was more than just light. It was life itself. And I remember it was such a beautiful experience. Looking back at that figure, because I didn't know what else to do. And I remember asking it as I took in everything, I said, is this death? Am I dying? And as an 8-year-old girl, that's just unreal to me. And so the figure didn't answer me, but I had this from the inside. I call it my dwelling place, like the depth of where I exist. This just chasm of unrelenting joy just flowing from me. And I remember experiencing just love's purest form. And it was so overwhelming. There was no fear anymore. I was just overtaken by just love itself. And I remember just reveling in that and knowing that this was what life was made from. This is what life was meant to be. This is the what you would call, I guess, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end, that where everything comes from and ends at. And as I took all of that in and really embodied that, and really it just transfigured me, honestly. I remember looking back at that figure when I'd settled into it. And I remember, instead of answering with my voice, I remember if I have a sensation, I want to try my inside voice. And this is the first time I'd ever known that was possible. And I with my inner voice, I asked, and just after a moment, am I dead? And the sensation of no came. And after a moment, I remember hearing a voice from that figure. It said, "Are you ready?" And I said, after a very small, short, like, if you would call it like a life review. I mean, I've got a dog, I've got a cat, I've got my parents and things like that. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. Like, if this is what life and love is, then yes, like, they're fine. I'm okay. And yes, whatever it is that this is, wherever I'm going, I trust it. I know I'm okay. And this is where I'm meant to be. And after I accepted that, it was as if the entire reality just fell into that chasm of love inside of me. And as I was fading into that, both consciousness and reality and things, I remember briefly there was this moment where I was falling into that in complete trust and love. And then I remember crossing a boundary where love existed in its purest form, and then fear could exist. And I can remember that clearly. And it took years to realize that was when I went back into my body. And it was, Jeff, it was like hours. Because I remember the next thing I realized was I was lying on the couch with a mirror in my hand and, of course, like a blanket on, and I was speaking to my mother, and I stopped mid-conversation. And I was like, what happened? Where am I? How did I get here? And she looked confused, and I just kept hearing. I was like, what happened? What happened? Where was I? Like, where am I? Like, am I okay? And she got irritated, and she just kind of left. And I remember taking a moment, and I had that mirror in my hand, and I could see like this part of my face. And I remember shifting it to where, you have a natural instinct to see your face. And I let out like a blood curdling scream, because if you cut an orange in half and you put it on a second grader's head, it was just covering the right corner of my temporal lobe. And that was when, of course, my mother was like, we need to take her to the doctor. And he basically said she shouldn't be alive. She said the only reason, if there was a reason, because my brain was falling. Like there could have been irreversible damage, but he said the reason that I actually survived was because I was so young, my skull buckled and it swelled out instead of in, obviously. So, but after that day, I was forever changed.
Kara, thank you for sharing your experience with us. Who do you think that being was?
I'm so glad you asked, because honestly, like, as I was telling you a little bit earlier, Jeff, I'm relatively new to the spirituality of things. And people have asked, was it a spirit guide? Was it an angel? Was it God or whatnot? And the only way I can answer this is that figure, although at first I felt as if it was like my sister or whatever, once I crossed that line and I realized love, I was in the pure presence of love, I dwelled on it for a while, and I realized that I was so much one with that figure. Like it didn't feel separate from me. I know that sounds strange, but it didn't feel like a God or a guide or an angel. It felt as though it was part of me. And so I feel as though the universe, with all of the indies that I've heard of, or all the stories of connection with guides or whatnot, I just feel as though love meets us where we are. And if angels speak to you, or if even parents or grandparents or loved ones, or even people have talked about aliens or whatever, I believe that love meets you where you are. And at that 8 years old, I just needed a figure that was safe in that particular moment. And I believe that if it was anything, it would have been my higher self, like an in-cart, like, I don't know, a figure of my higher self coming back and speaking to me, or the universe itself in that form.
I realized that you were only 8, but after this experience happened, did you make any drastic changes in your life?
Thank you for asking that. Yes, my life just changed. It wasn't even like I needed to change things. I was just changed. People, I'm not a religious person, but I believe there's truth in all things, and there are truths in like the transfiguration stories, where one experiences God, which is the purest form of love or whatnot, and in many ways, and then they are transformed, they are transfigured, they are a different being, in alignment and oneness. And to be completely honest, I was the embodiment of a sweet 8-year-old just in pure love's form. I wanted to be everyone's friend. I wanted to love everyone. I knew oneness just naturally. Like I sought out instinctively just wisdom um, and I mean, people called me like naive and gullible and things like that, things like, but it was just the embodiment of that presence, that peaceful presence in a childlike form. And that was my center of gravity. That is what I lived and breathed.
Did you get any gifts that could be considered psychic?
This is so exciting. I love your questions. This is phenomenal. So yes, I just didn't know what they were at the time because I was just, from what I understand, and I am definitely not a master in spirituality and whatnot, but I feel like there are two kinds of people, broadly, right? People who have studied religion and spirituality and come through knowledge and studying and wisdom and things like that to an experience with like yoga and things like that. And then there are what I would call wilders, which would be me, who just had this experience and then is like, okay, let's just ride that ship through. And so when I say this, there were 4 experiences in my childhood that I now know to be premonitions and visions of future events, specifically death. And I was never afraid of it. And people never really understood that. I always grieved differently. But first one was, just briefly, I was very in tune with nature, like animals and things like that. And there was a cow giving birth in our barn, and I was upstairs, like, it was like a year or so after the indie, I was like rummaging through trying to find the kittens, and I did. It was fun. I played with them and I came down. And anyway, she had thrown a calf, and the fellas, like the vet and my father, were at the end of the barn, talking like fellas do at the end of the day. And I remember I was like, I was drawn to her, and which wasn't unnatural. I was had a very natural curiosity with animals in general. And anyway, I could tell there was something wrong, but it was more than like she was struggling. It was like there was something really wrong. And so anyway, I was hit by that realization, and that realization mimicked the intensity of when I was in my near-death experience. Like, this is life and death. Like, she's going to die if she doesn't get help. Like, she's not done. So anyway, so I went over to the vet and I tried to get them to help her. I kept pleading. I was like, she's not done. You have to tell me. I can help her. And they're like, no, this is what happens. Things as if I hadn't seen, tens of 20s of cows being birthed into existence. Anyway, so I got very upset, and they had to take me inside or whatnot. And I just kept saying, she's not done. She's not done. And anyway, the next day that she died with 2 more calves in her. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that was the start of like, okay, there was something that told me this. Like, okay, I'm going to make sure I listen to this. Next time was actually a few years later. My grandfather died. We actually got really close before he died of cancer. And then my grandmother and I from there got very close. I have a very large family, so it's very, very special to have a connection with my grandmother. And she was at our family ranch. And I was a bit of a fat kid. And after the huge turkey dinner that we had, just huge, like my father is one of 10 and I'm one of 8. And so we just had very large meals, and we were very hearty eaters. Someone had brought chocolate donuts, and I ate the entire bag by myself in the bathroom because I was a silly person. And I got really sick to my stomach, and I hate being sick to my stomach. So I was on the couch, I was whining, I'm having a terrible time. And I remember hearing people milling around to leave. And I realized it was my grandmother. And I was like, I just can't get up. I'll see her, I'll see her later and whatnot. And the world stopped. It was as clear and as still. Like, my pain and my discomfort all went away. And this voice, and it said, what if this is your grandmother's last Thanksgiving? And the reality hit me And I literally just leapt off the couch. I sprinted across the room, and I wrapped up my grandmother and I said, "Grandmother, I love you. I love you so much." And uh, it was a day later, my father found her asleep. She just fell asleep and never woke up in her house. And again, young enough to like, okay, like this is something, but not old enough to like really realize what was happening until junior high. It was seventh grade math. I hated math. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning. Why am I in math class? And I didn't feel well that day. Went in, sat down, put my head on my hands in the desk. Everyone was milling in. And by the way, like all of these experiences, like the cow and grandmother, I always thought, okay, they're in this beautiful place, so I can let them go. So like I said, I grieve differently. This day, sick, head in my hands, kids were milling in, and I remember hearing the phone ring, and then all of a sudden, again, everything stilled, very much like my NDE, and sickness went away, my concentration, but it was literally supersonic. I know it sounds crazy, but I could hear the click of the receiver as she picked it up, and the zip of the cord against the desk, because you have those long cords, remember we used to have in class. And I remember her hearing the receiver click on her ear, like her pearl earring. And I remember hearing her say hello. And then this voice again, as clear as day, said, "It's Jenny." And my head popped up and I looked at her from across the room, and it was like her face just told me before I even knew. And she said, "Okay." And she put the receiver down and told all the kids to sit down. And she said, "Guys, I have something terrible to tell you. On the way to school this morning, Jenny was killed in a car accident. And if you need to go see the counselor, you can." And that was when shifted, like my reality shifted to where it became real. And Jeff, when like I was grieving for Jenny, because Jenny was 2 years older than me, my sister's best friend. Like we were in a 500-person town. We knew everyone. Like they went to church with us. Like I knew her. So I was grieving like it was like a family loss. But on top of that, I did not know what to do, because I was like, all of these experiences hit me. And I went through that class. I don't even remember that class. The next class was computer class. And I was just so zoned out. The teacher actually kind of got irritated with me. He's like, "Kara, if you're not going to, be in class or whatever." And he saw my face. He was like, "You need to go to the counselor's office." And so I did. And I remember walking up there, and I remember seeing all of the girls who were grieving and all of the milling around. And I had this reality check. And I was like, yes, I'm grieving with them, but I had this experience and I've had these experiences. What is this? Who do I tell? Like I'm in this small town, and I had trouble in school. Like I was bullied. I was very kind of an outcast. And of course my family life wasn't as supportive as it could have been. And so from that day on, I was like, I have to just figure this out. And during like the other experiences, I had developed a very close relationship with what I would call God at the time, but the spirit, like just one is the universe, right? And so from that day until about 3 years later, I was like, this is a junior, almost senior in high school, I think. And I was walking up the stairs from the basement. In Kansas, there's like finished basements and then top basements. It's a ranch style house. And my mother was downstairs with my brother-in-law, Terrence. I have a very large family. So I was like 10 when Terrence was introduced to the family. My older sister could be my mom, like kind of thing. And so anyway, Terrence and I became close because I loved horses and he was a cowboy, whatever. And so very much like a brother to me, like a real brother. He chose to be my brother. And so he was downstairs too, and it was time for dinner, and my mother went upstairs, and I was, of course, Terrence was like, ladies first. And I think I hit the second or the third step, and I remember Jeffrey, the world, like the physical world shifting. And I remember I was in this vision, like a vision like as tangible as you and me right now, right? And I don't remember for some reason what happened, but I do remember coming out of that. And it was like, it had to have been moments. But when I came out of that, I knew that my brother Terrence was going to die young. And I remember I just stood there on the stairs. And so long that Terrence kind of poked fun. He was like, did you miss a step, kind of thing? And I remember just like turning around, pushing him down that stair. And I like threw my arms around him. I'm like, Terrence, I love you so much. I hope you understand that. Like, you have been a brother to me. Thank you for all you've ever done for me. Thank you. I love you so much. And it was about 4, possibly 5 years later, when I realized just how right I was. And I was in college, and I was not happy, and I was in a bad place. And I remember the night and everything. I got a phone call. Well, it's in my book. But I had to call my brother after an experience the next day, after something happened. And I remember calling my brother, and he was like, Kara, you need to sit down. And I was like, I'd split from my family, so I don't really call them. So it's odd that we had this communication. Anyway, so I called my brother, and he says, Kara, you need to sit down. And I was like, you're going to tell me why you're calling me. And he's like, I think you really need to sit down. I was like, you should probably tell me. And so he said, Kara, Terrence W. Gear died in a helicopter crash last night, and he's not coming home. And like, you think when you have like a reality shifting experience, it just keeps, like, every one of them is so profound and so different. And this is when I knew. I was like, I have a connection here. I have a gift. This is, and of course, like the grief, like just the grief, and then the reality of all this. And I still can't tell anybody. Nobody knows. And I'm just trying to process this. And so, all of these moments are what I call the fingerprints of the divine. And it's like love's pursuit of me in the darkest times of my life, like losing my grandmother, and then of course Jenny, and then Terrence, and having that connection and knowing it's real, knowing that there's something there, and having this different experience, because people looked at me and they're like, Kara, are you, like, I know you're grieving, but how are you so strong? And they're like, I knew you had a relationship. And I was like, Terrence is in one of the most beautiful places you'll ever be in. And I am broken, but there was always this foundational, I say joy, not in happiness, but joy, I believe, in my personal opinion, is a foundation of rock solid faith and hope when there is a storm just absolutely brewing, and is almost like it's your stone that you're built upon, not the sand. And so I try to explain it to them. But I would say those moments in childhood were the defining factors that pushed me from that moment on, like my young adulthood, like my 20s, 30s, and now I'm 40. The 20s and the 30s were literally just, I was like, okay, if I'm going to trust you, if you're real, if we're going to do this, I'm in. And it was just this beautiful love story of me trusting and me diving in to that deep dwelling place and asking questions and finding answers there and following intuition and following all these things that I share in my book. But later on, those gifts from premonitions turned into like finding favor and and then to miraculous healings.
So you mentioned 4 premonitions, or 4 major ones. Is this still going on for you, or did it stop?
I think it shifted. So what I've known about like spirituality is like some people have one gift, like mediumship or healing or whatever. And it's just that one track, like that's kind of like a main one. I believe because I was a wilder and because that I had no idea about spirituality, I believe all of these gifts were presented at particular times in my life when I needed them most. So I would say, as far as right now, they haven't manifested in that way. To be completely honest, it's more of it's different. I think it's different now. And this next season, I'm excited to kind of see like what does come up because, like I said, I've written my book. I'm speaking to phenomenal people like you and your work and whatnot. And this is just a new season where I'm excited to kind of see what comes up.
Do you fear death?
No, I look forward to it. Fear of death, like death that lost its sting when I was 8 years old. And a lot of times people are afraid of dying, but not death. Like death is a moment. It's when the reality shifts and you just transfer over. And they're afraid of the unknown afterwards. I'm not afraid of any of that. I have seen enough and known enough and tasted the worst and the best of this life and relied so heavily and so radically upon the oneness that I am with the divine, Gaia, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, that it just takes that away. It literally, like there's going to be a transition, obviously, when it does happen, but I do not fear death. I am so grateful. It took me a long time to get to here, but I'm very grateful I have these experiences on this planet, in this world, this reality, because there was a long time, Jeff, where I was mad I was here. I was like, if it's so beautiful over there, why am I here? Like, what is the suffering? Things like that. And so that beautiful healing and understanding of we don't have to wait to death to get love's purest form. We can have it here and manifest it. Like that's what we are to do. We're supposed to live that joy, that presence, that hope, that love, that faith now. And that's why I just don't, because I'm living it now and in the next one.
What is your conclusion of why did you come here?
I believe my purpose is to challenge what's possible. I believe because my whole story from 8 years old, like the golden age is 7 and then transferring into 8 years old, I challenge what the world says is possible, just naturally. And I believe I was made, my personality, my experiences, like how easy it is for me to just believe and have faith like a child. And just, I believe I'm made to live this life so differently than what the world says we should or is possible or whatnot, and to just share that. I believe we need more people like that, because I believe that we are in a conscious shift, a conscious evolutionary shift to where this is the reality now. Like we understand the true power, the true potential of what actually is, and we can tap into that and literally manifest the life of our dreams. But that's, I believe, that's what I was made for.
Can you give us some tips to manifest love and the life of our dreams?
Yes, thank you so much. That comes, cliche, if you want to call it that, it comes from self-love. And what self-love is just the reckless abandonment of trusting that which is within and your oneness with it. Like that tapping into that dwelling place within. And there's a Bible verse. Like I said, I'm not religious, but there's truth in all things. And this one Bible verse, when I heard it, even as a child, I just clung to it. Like it was like I embodied it. And it is, it's gonna make me cry. Sorry. Um, there's one thing I ask, and this I seek, and that is to dwell in the house of the Lord all of my days, to gaze upon its beauty, to ask questions and find answers there. And what that means to me is all of us, every single one of us has a dwelling place of love within us, this effervescent spring of absolute love and joy. And we have the ability to connect with that, but we are so distracted on a regular basis, specifically like with the way that society is built today. And I think that what I would encourage everyone to do is to find your way of tapping into that, and be like ferocious on protecting that. Find what that is. Absolutely. Like be jealous of that. Be more protective of that than anything else. Like teach your children, things like that. I just believe we have all the answers we need inside of us to manifest a life of our dreams. And to do that, I believe that we have to learn to feel again, to trust the universe, to realize what play is, and to know that our life is literally just to do that. Yes, we have bills to pay and things like that, but we have been programmed to believe that our life is meant to, work, live this much, and then die, and it's based on fear. If we ground ourselves every day in the practice of finding that self-love, like self-love is literally just finding love in yourself, and then allowing that to guide us in every single day decisions, like if it's meditation for you, if it's working out for you, if it's listening to podcasts like this and seeking and finding, or living in a van, which I would love to do. I'm going to get back in a van life, or like on a farm, or speaking, whatever it is, follow that joy. And you will find yourself living in the cyclical relationship between self-love, trust, hope, faith, in that which is, and it just feeds into itself. And it may seem broad, but quite frankly, just follow that which is within. And I believe that's the key, truly the key.
You just mentioned that you're going to get back into living a van life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So are you like one of those YouTubers who just lived out of a van for a while?
Yes. I love the story. So thank you for bringing this up. So it was when the shutdown happened, and I, like many people, I lost everything. I was in aesthetics, and in that time we couldn't be anywhere near like anyone, right? And so like everything just kind of shut down. And so I don't know where it started, but someone I knew had bought a van, and she was a woman, and she was like, oh yeah, I bought this van. I built this in it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, my dad owned a construction company, and like, I know about cars. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just see what's out there. And Jeff, I ended up finding this high top 96 7.3 diesel van that had already been gutted. And I bought it. I built an entire home like in the back, like a bed, a shower, a toilet, like a sink, and everything. And I literally lived in the New Mexico mountains for like 3 to 6 months. And it changed my life. That I remember sharing with you the spirit of Kansas, like the plains and the prairies, and like just the spirit of the land. And it's very akin to Native American cultures and the spirit of things when they speak about spirit, Gaia or spirit or God, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so I can't go back. So I got back, I got out of van life, and I've been kind of working towards this. And yes, I have a YouTube channel that I'm going to be launching, and I'll be living in a van, and hopefully traveling around and speaking and doing podcasting about just finding that life of freedom and just living it as an example.
I'm not aware of the different models of vans, but Would that size be like a passenger van or something, like a Chevy passenger van or a cargo van, and it was just gutted?
Yeah, for sure. And with those one of those plastic high tops, like a I don't know, 2 foot plastic high top. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
When you were out there living in the mountains, I'm assuming alone, what was your biggest spiritual takeaway from doing that?
It allowed me to face fear in a different way, because fear is present, but you don't have to allow it. There's healthy fear, and then there's fear of fear. And fear of, like, don't touch that, like, let's not pet a bear, okay, like those kind of, like, that's natural, like that's we need that. But what happened to me in particular when the shutdown happened is there was unresolved trauma I needed to face. And my spiritual journey is beautiful. It is very raw. It's very real. Like I said, that's why my book's called Love's Miracles and Misery. I hold nothing back on that point, because I want people to understand there's a duality between the miracles and the magic of this world and what people would call misery, but we don't have to look at it as misery, because that which is tragic is also magical. And so in those moments alone, it allowed me to understand the world can change in a moment, and that nothing is permanent. There's always change. And it went back to me realizing what really matters, and that the only thing that matters is my connection with my oneness and following that. And so I remember this morning I woke up, and it was, if you could imagine, like the New Mexico mountains and this beautiful lake, and it was morning, and so the mist was still there, and I just kind of watched the sunrise burn away all the mist. And as I was watching, I didn't realize there was like a whole herd of wild goat just kind of coming down the mountain around me, and they just kind of split, and there's like a sea splitting, and just kind of came around, and I watched them. And literally some of them started like jumping on my van and just kind of like walking around me. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I had that moment of connection again with nature, and seeing how absolutely vastly unrelentingly beautiful and mysterious and wild and healing it is. And then I had this moment where there was a caribou another day, and it was like being chased by a bear, and I was like, I'm like, there is a whole world out here that I forgot about. And it gave me courage to realize anything is possible. Like anything is possible, because if that can exist by itself in oneness and just wildness, and yet contained beauty, it was like it awoke this fire in me, and it's just been burning ever since.
If you had a friend that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, what type of advice would you give?
Oh, my heart. I just want to feel this for a second. One of the most beautiful things about being alive is that we get to feel. And I love moments like this, because it awakens that in me. If I had someone that was near to me and dear to me, obviously the first would be, I am so sorry you're grieving. I'm so sorry you're hurt. I see how much they loved you and you loved them. I see how special the relationship was, and that is something to grieve. And I would let them. And when they were ready, I would introduce a conversation. Most of my close friends know about what I've been through, and I would ask them if it's okay if I spoke into it. And I would reiterate the indescribable presence that they're in, like that love without fear, that that place that is safe and beautiful and as close as you and I are, and yet feeling like it's so far away because we can't get to it. And to know that they are with you. And I say that like not with you in spirit, but like legitimately. I believe because there are light spectrums I cannot see and sound I cannot hear, it beckons to my intelligence and my common sense to know that there are other realms or possibilities or existences that can be. And since I have been on that other side, I would tell them that, or encourage them to speak that love and to find how to grieve and to know that they are so much closer than you think. And that love, that grief that they're feeling in their chest and their body and their soul, it is literally just love aching for what has been lost. But we can change that grief into feeling for our loved ones and to seeking possibilities of connections with them outside of what the world can say is possible. Some people have found comfort in mediumship or prayer or animals coming to them. I would encourage them to be open to however their loved one wants to speak to them or how the universe wants to help them grieve. But I would just encourage them and try to be a support. But I would just try to, as best I could, just to tell them and to get across to them that there is nothing but love on the other side. It is beautiful. It is perfection. It is something to look forward to. And if I believe we can change our perspective on what we feel, how we think and we feel towards death, our lives can be filled with so much more joy and we would grieve different. Of course, I wouldn't say that to them, but that's just a side note.
After your experience, have you ever seen a UFO?
I have seen something that does not make sense to me. And I know that there's a UFO. I didn't know this, but yes, there are UFO sectors in this NDE kind of area or whatever. And I'm new to it, but I was at my family ranch and I don't know what, we were going somewhere. And in Kansas, there's these rolling hills, right? And vast prairies and plains, rolling hills, farmlands, as far as you can see, right? And I remember them because I was afraid of heights, and I got like, my sisters would go really, really fast on it, and like you get that like sensation that you wanted to like throw up and die at the same time. And we were going to my aunt's house, and I was in the van. And I was in the backseat, always in the backseat, like a 15-passenger van in the backseat. And I remember, I don't know if I heard something about UFOs or like just strange sightings of this things. I remember it was in the van and something compelled me to look back. And I was like, why would I do that? But I looked back and I swear to you, there was like on the other side of the hill, it was like, there's hills and it was farmland here. And then there was like a cove or whatever. And I remember in that cove, only I could see, unless you looked back and you were looking at this particular point, like where I was told to look. I looked over there and there was like a ship of some kind, a plane or a ship hovering there. 20, possibly 30 feet off of the ground, just hovering there. And I remember turning around. I was like, did I see that? And I turned back around. It was still there. And that is the closest thing I have ever come to seeing an alien or a UFO. So it's not as though I don't believe they exist, but I don't have as much experience with them as I do the premonitions and the healings and things like that. So yes, that's as close as I can get.
Kara, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
I would love to. Please do. That's what I look forward to. I want to connect. I want to because I learn just as much as you do. So please do.
What's the best way to contact you?
You can go through my website. There is a way to connect with me there, or you can, my email is info, info at karamarlene.com, KaraMarlene.com.
Now, you mentioned you're going to start a new van life YouTube channel, but do you have a channel for your near-death experience?
I do. I started one. That was what I did before. So I spoke about my book and my experiences, and I started actually finding people who had similar experiences and whatnot. And then I got into like speaking about healing and whatnot. So yes, there's lots of content on my YouTube channel, and that will still be very much a center of content along with my van life.
Your book is called Love's Miracles in the Misery.
Yeah.
If people want to find out more about it, do they go to your website or Amazon?
So you can do both. It's easier to go to my website, karamarlene.com, and there's just a link there. There's a little bit of a description. You can find it on Amazon. You just have to put the whole title and my name. So it's easier just to go to my website.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
I mean, I do have a TikTok, and I'm trying to expand on healing, spiritual healing, trauma in an integrated way. So from not awaken, because that's kind of like cliche, everyone uses it, but from an experiencer that knows love and has healed deep wounds and had miraculous healings and premonitions, things like that. I think that more people are open to hearing how to heal deeply and well, and to live a life of freedom, and to be these beautiful manifestors that we were just made to be. So yes, that is a project that I'm working on and will launch after I get settled into van life. But thank you for asking that.
Well, once you're up and running and you're back in your van life, maybe you can check back in with us, like come to my Saturday night live stream sometime and show us like your van and what you're up to.
I thank you so much. I would love that. What an amazing invitation. Thank you so much. I love that.
Kara, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
If I strip down what I truly wanted in this world, to leave the entire world, every single person on this planet with something, I would want them to understand like just how truly special they are, how majestically and magically and mysteriously they're made. This whole world, we forget how the beauty and the magic and the mystery of this world and this life, and how we are just literal fingerprints, like so different, like snowflakes. We are meant to find the joy and the love and follow that, and to be these beautiful, special beings, and to live from love and to enjoy this life, literally, no matter what we face. And I would want to, as truly magical as my life has been, because I have no regrets, and I mean none. I don't care what I've walked through. I don't care what I've seen, as on top of the mountain or the deepest valley. Like, I have a full, beautiful life, and I am so grateful to have had this experience. There is nothing more beautiful to me than to see someone just living, knowing how their truth and their life and their light just shines. And I would just encourage people just to find that, and to know without a shadow of a doubt that you are here for a reason, even if it's just to breathe and to live and to love and to play. That's it. And I truly wish everyone to get to that point, to fully embrace that and to live the life of their dreams.
Kara, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you again. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on here to share my story, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.